The title of this video is Foreign Policy Making. So I'm trying to present foreign policy making from the inside. How is foreign policy developed? How it germinates from the inside of the United States government. Now, the first thing to do is to understand that none of the factors listed here are 100% decisive in all situations, that all of them are important. The first one is ethnic lobbies. Ethnic lobbies have considerable power, especially when it comes to the issues of particular interest to them. That is to say, ethnic lobbies are primarily interested in the welfare of the ethnicity that they champion. Ethnic lobbies do not have control over the general course of foreign policy. One of the reasons for this power of ethnic lobbies is due to the fact that some ethnic groups are concentrated in major cities in large states that are important in presidential elections. For example, why did Bill Clinton become deeply involved in the process of reconciliation in Northern Ireland in the late 1990s? Because of the significant Irish population in the states that are important for Democratic presidential candidates like New York and Massachusetts. These are states with a lot of electoral votes at stake, and they tend to vote Democratic. So in order to keep the base happy, Bill Clinton was involved, and in fact, his involvement played a role, not a great role, but some role in the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, which brought peace to Northern Ireland after 3 decades or so of strife. Why did Congress of the United States pass a resolution declaring what the Turkish government had done to Armenians in 1915, a genocide? Well, because of the Armenian lobby in the United States, Congress was willing to alienate Turkey, which is the only Muslim country that is a part of American-led military alliance called NATO, because of domestic pressure from an ethnic lobby. Why has the United States traditionally taken the side of Israel, but not Arab states in the Arab-Israeli conflict? Because of the Jewish lobby, a significant concentration of Jewish voters can be found in the states like New York and Florida and California, and those states have a lot of electoral college votes. So in order to make sure they win those states, candidates have taken the side of Israel in this conflict. Now, there's also a military-industrial complex, and this refers to the relationship between the Department of Defense and the private high-tech industry, particularly the areas of the industry that build weapons. So the Department of Defense contracts out its orders for high technology to the private sectors to companies like McDonnell Douglas, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, TRW, and others. And these companies are building military hardware for the Department of Defense. And why is this relationship symbiotic and potentially politically controversial? Well, because the Department of Defense is interested, as any bureaucracy is, in its own expansion, in more money, greater budgets, greater personnel. It wants to maximize its mission. And of course, the defense industry, the military contractors, want more orders because they want to stay in business. So they say, well, we need more, more, more. And eventually this can lead to war all on its own, because what good is all this military technology if it's never used? It has to be used. It has to be tested in real combat. In addition to that, defense contractors create significant economic spillovers into the rest of the economy. So, for example, when a major corporation like McDonnell Douglas or Lockheed Martin hires thousands of people, many of them are engineers and designers, then these engineers and designers will take their salary, and what will they do with it? Well, they will rent apartments, or they will buy houses, they will go out to eat at restaurants. This creates an economy, or strengthens the economy that already exists around what? Around these military contractors. So that the money that is initially destined for the defense industry eventually begins to permeate through consumer spending of defense industry employees into the larger economy, creating additional connections, seeping deeper into the overall economy of the country, which means if you want to reduce military budgets, these reductions hit not just the defense contractors themselves, but also the rest of the economy that's been created around it. So the Department of Defense always says, give us more money, give us more soldiers, you have all these military bases, and then what do they do with the money? They use it to create military hardware by contracting out to the military contractors. Military contractors are building hardware, and at the same time, the employees of these military hardware companies are also spending their money creating an infiltration of sorts, the permeation of the economy. So you have a permanent armaments industry that has its own interest at stake and continuously pushes that interest. And because of that, the likelihood of war increases simply because there's a constant call for greater military buildup and more money for the military. President is the key figure. If I had to single out any one factor that is more important than others here, it would be president. The president of the United States is the most important decision maker. He probably is responsible for 80 to 90% of foreign policy. It really all goes back to him. In recent decades, U.S. presidents have increasingly demonstrated their ability to take the country to war, and to do so without Congress declaring war. There has been no war declared since 1941, but a lot of wars have in fact been fought. And presidents' control over the direction of foreign policy and his ability to even direct very specific aspects of foreign policy is almost absolute. When it comes to foreign policy, president is a borderline dictator. Who else plays a significant role? National Security Advisor. This is a position without portfolio. This person does not head the department. This person is simply an expert on foreign policy who advises the president. And then you have the CIA, where it's very important because the CIA reports directly to president without the filter of any department. Congress plays a role, but in recent decades we have seen that this role has diminished. Secretary of State also plays a role. It's important to understand that Secretary of State, just as the director of the CIA and just as the National Security Advisor, they're all working for president. Congress does not. Congress does not work for president. But Congress is divided against itself, and not all members of Congress have access to the highest levels of classified information. National Security Advisor, Secretary of State, and director of the CIA are very few in number, and so they can concentrate their interest, but they work for president. President can get rid of them anytime he wants. So for this reason, while they can try to influence president, they don't dominate president's decision, because ultimately it's up to president to decide the course of foreign policy. And this is basically it.